Hello friends! Welcome back to another episode of Reddit's ProRevenge. In this episode, you'll hear what happens when you cheat a nice person on Craigslist, why you shouldn't mess with group projects, and a dishonest vice principal getting what he deserves. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. Story 1: Kid tried to flip the motorcycle I sold him using my photos. 2 years ago, I sold a motorcycle on Craigslist. The guy who bought it was an early 20s guy who didn't bring any riding gear with him. He said he'd left it at home and saw my ad while he was at work. I rode the bike back and forth down the street for him so he could check it out. He said it sounded fine. Long story short, I let him talk me down $100 because he seemed like a nice kid. I rode the bike to his sister's house for him, had my wife follow, and she picked me up. The next day, it's back on Craigslist for $500 more than what I was asking, using my pictures. Now, I'm a professional photographer. I've had my photos on magazine covers. I was okay with the kid conning me and flipping the bike, but not with using my pictures. So, I sent him a text telling him to take the ad down and post his own damn pictures. He didn't. So, I posted my own Craigslist ad that said something like, "Free chickens and goats." The description was, "I'm old and tired, and I think it's time to quit. I've got 600 hens and enough roosters to keep them laying, also 40 milk goats. I just want to make sure they go to a good home. First come, first served. Send me a text. If I don't respond right away, call me." And I posted his phone number. I waited a day, called from my home phone at 9:30 at night. "Hello?" He sounded tired. I said, "I'm calling about the chickens." He responded, "Ain't no chickens at this number. I'm not selling chickens." I waited half a second, then said, "What about goats?" He yelled into the phone that there were no goats either, then hung up. The next day, he texted me, told me he'd changed the pictures, and asked if I could please take down the ads for the chickens. I thanked him for taking down my photos and asked him what the hell he meant about the chickens. Story 2: Leech tried to fail me, get suspended. This happened a few years ago when I was at school. I was 14 at the time. Every year, our class teacher teams up the students into pairs to have them do group projects for the rest of the year. Unfortunately, I was paired with this guy named Dick. Now, Dick was such a Richard that nobody wanted to be in a group with him. He was the leech of the class, a class clown who couldn't even make funny jokes if he tried, and worst of all, he did no work of his own until the last minute and was a pro at cheating and copying during exams. Unfortunately, he had managed to fool the teachers into thinking that he was a good, albeit lazy, student. I had no doubt that I was in for a rough year of doing group projects all by myself. Right off the bat, Dick did his absolute best to do no work, and since I was a pushover, I ended up doing 100% of the work. I tried bringing it up with my physics teacher a few times, but I was told that unless I had proof, she couldn't mark him differently. I had a strict family, so I didn't have a phone of my own at that age and had to use my mom's phone to interact with Dick. All of our talks happened via calls, and my mom's phone didn't have the option to record calls. Therefore, there was no proof. Apparently, Dick came to know that I tried to rat him out, so he tried to pull a fast one on me. He called me up during one project and told me to give him the PowerPoint presentation via USB the next day so he could include his own additions. Like the idiot I was, I did it, thinking that Dick had finally turned over a new leaf and was going to help with the project. Turns out, he wanted revenge on me for telling on him by editing out my name from the credits and using all my work for his own. I was shocked when we were called to present, and I saw the opening slide. Instead of having my name and his name, he deleted my name completely and used my work for his own. Dick went on to tell the teacher that I didn't do any work, and I had to stand there, embarrassed, because I knew that arguing in front of everyone would have just made things worse. After a lot of arguing and almost crying after class, I managed to convince the teacher not to fail me. She agreed but said that I would get lower marks for said project than Dick. The last I saw of Dick that day was him wearing a giant smile on his face. I'd had it. The revenge? I came up with an amazing plan for the next project. As our project came closer, I called Dick and told him that I didn't mind doing the entire project as it was my favorite subject, which is the truth because physics was one of the classes I absolutely loved. He readily agreed, although I told him I'd be making separate PowerPoints for the both of us, my part in the first and his share in the second. I told him I'd simply included a video in his PowerPoint, so he didn't need to read it to prepare himself. Instead, I prepared my part diligently and began to create his worst nightmare. Instead of the explanatory video on, ironically, friction and forces, I included a video from an adults-only website that had the actors getting right to it from the beginning, if you catch my drift. As expected, Dick didn't recheck his part, which was a good thing. Time to let it play out. The next day, when we went to class, I asked Dick to come with me to the teacher to tell her that we had separate PowerPoints. He agreed to make it clear to my teacher that I had nothing to do with this messed up PowerPoint. Dick himself explained the situation to our physics teacher. Unsurprisingly, she agreed. I flawlessly presented my part, save for a few stutters here and there because of my nervousness and excitement. As soon as I said, "Now Dick will show you a short video that will educate you on how forces and friction work in everyday life," blah blah blah, I quickly stepped away and waited for hell to unleash while Dick swapped my USB for his and started his PowerPoint. The next few minutes were amazing. As soon as Dick started the clip, everyone went slack-jawed, including him. The volume was turned up pretty loudly. And you know how those videos can be, right? A lot of noises that generally aren't made for the public to hear. My physics teacher was too stunned to turn off the computer. I swear, if a student hadn't recovered in time, my classmates would have seen a pretty explosive climax, if you catch my drift. Dick was frozen as our teacher yelled at him. Everyone thought that this was his joke for forces and friction. Keep in mind that he was the class clown. Eventually he was let out and taken to the principal's office for his behavior. Soon enough it became the talk of our school. Everyone gave Dick dirty looks as he entered the school the next day with his parents. I felt sorry for his parents being humiliated like that, but not too sorry. Suffice to say, Dick was quickly given an indefinite suspension for the rest of the school year. He had to attend summer school and had an absolutely shitty reputation for the rest of his years at school. I don't think he ever spoke to me after that. Story 3. She kept the receipts and got the vice principal removed from his job. My best friend, Karen, is a first-grade teacher, and as soon as she told me this story, it gave me such a justice boner that I knew I had to retell it here. 2 years ago, Karen had a student named Xavier, a sweet little 6-year-old boy when things were good, but his parents had just gotten divorced. His mom wasn't that great even before she was out of the picture, and his dad was quite disengaged from both his son's behavior and his education. Rather understandably, Xavier acted out in class. He refused to listen to Karen, he pushed other kids, and disrupted the class in more ways than I could possibly list. Now Karen worked her ass off with Xavier to improve his behavior and to get his dad more involved in a positive way. She'd often call me to talk about it, to decompress, because that's what friends are for. But occasionally, Xavier went too far and did something she couldn't deal with in class, like trying to shove a sharpened pencil into another student's hand. On those occasions, she wrote him up with a referral and sent him to the vice principal. But surprise, surprise, the vice principal was absolutely no help whatsoever. He would joke around with Xavier, refuse to address the problem that Karen sent Xavier for, and give him candy. Then, he would lecture Karen for writing up a 6-year-old boy for any reason because it reflected badly on the vice principal. I'm pretty sure this had to do with what's known as merit pay, but whatever. Unfortunately, his actions made it significantly harder for Karen to help Xavier. To top it all off, Karen figured out after a few referrals that the vice principal logged into the system and erased each of Xavier's referrals, thus erasing all evidence of Xavier's pattern of behavior. In a word, that's bad. I know nothing about education, but I damn well know that much. My brother was a complete monster in elementary school and got in so much trouble from 3rd to 6th grade that both the principal and the vice principal were on a first-name basis with my mom. Those records sure didn't disappear. Neither did they go to the shredder, and certainly not from the digital ether. Karen reported this to her higher-ups who weren't the vice principal, but they both told him about the complaint and specified that Karen was the one making the complaint. The vice principal was cold and rude to her after that. Nothing was done about it because it seemed to be a one-time thing, but now Karen knew what to do. Every time she had to write up Xavier again, which blessedly happened less as the year went on, she meticulously documented everything herself. She sent herself all the relevant info, saved the emails, the whole shebang. By the end of the year, Xavier's behavior had greatly improved, thanks to her mentoring and the various ways she learned to engage with him in the classroom. She even talked to the 2nd grade teacher to make sure this woman knew how to work with Xavier. Karen went above and beyond for this child. Partway through the next school year, the higher-ups came to talk to Karen again. Even though nothing was done about her complaint the previous year, a record had been made of it. As it turns out, another teacher had reported the vice principal for doing the exact same thing to her as he had done to Karen. If she had anything related to her own ordeal, they wanted to see it. And oh boy, did she ever. She gave them every single digital receipt that she had accumulated for the better part of the school year to compare with the vice principal's. establishing a pattern of him undermining teachers by erasing students' patterns of behavior. The vice principal was quickly removed from his position as the vice principal. Even though he wasn't technically fired, he was just moved to a different school and put in a much lesser position and paid significantly less than before. Story 4. Teenage Babysitting Revenge. When I was in my teens, I had a paper route, mowed lawns, and did that sort of thing for extra money. I also babysat. One of my paper route customers wanted a babysitter for Saturday night, and I took the gig. They wanted me there for 7 o'clock in the evening, and I was 10 minutes early. The wife kept an immaculate home, everything in its place and very tidy. When I arrived, she gave me the rundown, including pointing out how she had graciously provided me a snack, 2 whole Oreo cookies and a glass of juice on the counter. I had skipped dinner, and soon after they left, I explored the pantry, found the bag of Oreos, and helped myself to 2 more. Now, this pantry was the size of a large walk-in closet and was stuffed. There were lots of canned goods, all facing forward with the labels in perfect alignment. There were cereal boxes set up on the shelves in descending sizes. I don't know if she was a 1970s version of a doomsday prepper, but there was a ton of stockpiled food in there. All went well until they returned. The wife said she was paying me from 8 o'clock in the evening, even though I arrived before 7, because they were late leaving. She also made a point of repeating that her husband was giving me a ride home for free. It was after midnight, and I was 15. Did they expect me to walk home, whatever? Then the storm hit. The next day she showed up at our house, freaking out at my mom, calling her a lousy parent and me a thief. Why? Because I ate 2 Oreos. That's right, she counted the Oreos and found 2 missing. The argument was short. My mom told her to get lost, and she roared away down the street. Fast forward a month or 2, I'm delivering the Saturday paper in the early afternoon, and the husband asks if I'm available to babysit that evening. Apparently, the sitter they had arranged backed out at the last minute. Against my better judgment, I accepted because I could use the cash. The wife made a point of mentioning that she did not want a repeat of last time and made me agree not to eat anything except what she had laid out for me. Fine. I didn't know at the time, but it's clear now that the wife suffered from OCD. If I had known, I probably wouldn't have done what I did. I have more knowledge about psychological conditions now, but at the time, all I knew was that this woman was a jerk who had yelled at me and my mom. As soon as they left, I got to work. I removed every label from every can in the pantry. She had them all set up by categories, soups on one shelf, canned fruit on another, canned vegetables on a different shelf. I scattered them. I also shuffled the boxes around and messed up that pantry any way I could. I pulled the tray of Chips Ahoy cookies out and put them in the Oreos bag, then pulled the Oreos out and put them in the Chips Ahoy bag. I pulled out the bag from the Rice Krispies box and swapped it with the cornflakes. You get the idea. Then I left a note on the floor that said, "Don't ever call me again." They paid me when they got home, and I said I would walk home. I then took the money they gave me and left it in their mailbox on the way out. The next morning, I gave my parents a heads up about what I'd done, just in case the psycho wife showed up again. They were disappointed but quite amused. She never showed up. I continued the paper route for some time, but within a few days I received a notice that they had canceled their delivery of the newspaper. Fine with me. Over the next few months, I would see them now and again and simply look at them and smile. They would scramble back into the house, avoiding me. There were also some kids on my route who had experience with this woman, and apparently she had treated others badly as well. That was the reason she couldn't find a sitter. Word had gotten around to avoid her. When I told a few people, they all thought it was brilliant and wished they had thought of it. Story 5. You say you're not hitting snooze all morning and ruining my sleep. I had a good friend staying on my couch years ago. I slept in the loft, so every morning I could hear his alarm go off, much earlier than I would normally wake up. I didn't mind because he needed to get up early for work, but annoyingly, every day he would, without exaggeration, hit snooze 8 or more times. So I would be woken up again and again throughout the hour while he tried to get his act together. It would take him at least 45 seconds each time the alarm went off to notice and hit snooze. I would notice it instantly after it went off and lie there awake, waiting for him to turn it off, knowing it would go on endlessly. It was ruining my morning sleep. When I confronted him about it, he denied hitting snooze more than once, if at all. He was sleeping so deeply that he honestly didn't remember doing it, and refused to believe what I was telling him, or acknowledge how much it was bothering me. I suggested that he just set his alarm for the time he needed to wake up, and let us both enjoy sleeping, rather than suffering through the continual alarms. He doubled down on his story that he was basically getting up right with the first alarm. I was counting though, and some days it was 12 times he was hitting snooze. After a couple of weeks of this while he was at work, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I took his alarm clock apart and found the wiring on the circuit board that connected to the snooze button. At first I had planned to just disable the snooze button so he would be forced to get up on the first alarm. But with the clock apart, I came up with a better plan. I wired the snooze button to the alarm off switch, so now, instead of resetting the alarm to go off again in 10 minutes, it would just shut off entirely. If he was getting up on the first alarm like he claimed, it shouldn't be a problem, right? The next morning, I heard my friend's alarm go off, and eventually he rolled over, grunted, and hit snooze as normal. But then, I got to enjoy a few more hours of sleep until he finally woke up on his own and ran out the door, cursing loudly, late for work. This went on for about a week, him snoozing his alarm once, sleeping in, and being late for work. He sheepishly confided in me that his alarm wasn't working for some reason, and that he was afraid of losing his job. He didn't know what to do, but didn't trust his alarm anymore. That was supposed to be my moment of glory, but I honestly felt too bad for him at the time to rub his nose in his lack of awareness of his obnoxious alarm habits. He had just gone through a bit of a hard time and had been a good friend to me through my own difficulties. I told him he should probably just get a new alarm clock. Shortly thereafter, we both moved to a new city. I forgot about it until years later when we were reminiscing, and I told him how I had sabotaged his clock and how it proved he was a chronic snooze hitter. I'm still super proud of how it worked out, even if I was the only one who could appreciate it at the time. Story 6. Don't mess with Sergeant Jesse. Sergeant Jesse was a black man, about 5 feet 2 inches tall, but with a really wiry build, a total dynamo of a guy. Sergeant Jesse came back from Vietnam as an E7 and was placed in command of a group of white soldiers who were led by a bunch of E6 seconds who couldn't handle having a black man give them orders. Jesse didn't care, he just did his job. One day, Sergeant Jesse bought his wife a new Cadillac with white wall tires, and he drove it onto his base the first day to get his DOD window sticker. The car was parked in the company's parking lot, where all the NCOs parked. Much to his surprise, when he returned, all 4 tires were slashed. The E6 seconds were all curious and asked, "What are you going to do? It could have been anybody. Are you going to question the whole company about your wife's tires? By the way, how are you getting home?" This was followed by a snicker and a chuckle. It was understood that they thought he was going to raise a huge ruckus and become a distraction to command right as he got there, thus diminishing his reputation. Jesse didn't play that. He just said, "I'm not going to look for who did this. He is going to come to me." As first sergeant, Sergeant Jesse could authorize field training exercises and PT at his discretion. He called the company to order and told them they were going on a field training exercise immediately. They were ordered to grab only their GI-issued gear and be prepared to overnight for several days. Then he walked them out into the woods for about 10 miles and told them to set up their tents. After they constructed a more permanent tent with a wooden floor and a portable stove for him, he posted a guard at his door, lit a fire in the stove, and went to sleep. Did I mention it was December? Everyone else was sleeping on the ground in pup tents with no heat. So the exercises began. Jesse ran them like rented mules for 2 days through the woods. Long morning and evening runs, push-ups, pull-ups, lunges, digging latrine trenches in frozen ground. You know, team building, camaraderie-inspiring torture. After 2 days, one of the E6 seconds showed up with 2 black eyes, looking like 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag, as Jesse would say. Apparently, overnight, the company pulled a code red on one guy's ass and beat him until he agreed to confess, because they were damn tired of living in the woods in the winter. Jesse docked the man's pay and made him replace the tires, but didn't file charges against him because he thought he had paid dearly enough. More importantly, Jesse had made his point for everybody else on the base to see, you shouldn't mess with Sergeant Jesse. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed these stories today. Also, if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.